Welcome back to another video here on Free Will Photos. Today is going to be a quick edit inside of ON1 Photo RAW. Now, I'm not quite sure if I want this photo to be black and white or if I want to keep the color, but I do realize that I need to get rid of a few distracting elements, one of which is this little shadow area right over here. So I'm going to go ahead and jump into my healing brush and I'm just going to make it a little bit larger and paint this away. So we'll just get rid of that. Should be pretty easy, straightforward, and I'll sample something down here. Let's see how that looks. Maybe could be a little better. So let's just paint a tad bit over this top part. And I think that's going to be all right. So if I go Command and 0, that is no longer a distraction for me. So I'm okay with that. And then I have this bright spot that's right here. So I'm just going to click on that and get rid of that as well. And I think those are all of the distractions, maybe this little piece right here as well. So I got all kinds of stuff that I think is just distracting overall. Looks like there's this little piece. Okay, boom. So now that all of the distractions, at least the ones that I'm seeing, you let me know if you see a distraction. Nope, I see another one. Sorry. I'm going to get rid of this thing right up here. This little red speck. So now I think I've gotten rid of all of the distractions that I would care to get rid of. So it's time to kind of figure out what I want to do with this image. Now, for what it's worth, I did shoot this on my Sony a6700 and it's also a JPEG image. I built the camera profile in camera, so I think I'm okay with the way that the colors were rendered. I just want to enhance them a little bit. I'm also noticing that the fire hydrant here is kind of leaning in an odd direction. So let's see if we can fix that with a crop. So we'll hit the letter C and I'm just going to go ahead and rotate this a bit. Yeah, I think that that looks a little bit more believable. It's more appropriate. And I guess I got to pull in just a bit here if I want to slide this up or down. So we'll just slide this maybe about there. I can live with that. All right, so let's go ahead and commit that to the photo, and I think that that's fine. So now it's time to jump over to effects and figure out how we can just enhance these colors. And I want to keep them relatively muted. So I'm not going to be cranking up super heavy on the saturation. Instead, what I want to do is probably work with vibrance. And before I do that, let me add a local adjustment and just see if this is more appropriate for me. So instead of working in effects, I'm just going to come over here and grab my quick mask AI brush. It's going to analyze the image like it always does. And while it does, if you find a value, go ahead and smash that like button. And if you're new here, consider hitting subscribe to get more content. So I'm going to go ahead and select the top part of this fire hydrant and I'm going to paint in and we'll just go ahead and hit the blue check mark. Now, by default, this is going to add in that negative exposure. I don't really care for that. Instead, I want to add in vibrance. Now, I could have just clicked this off the top, but I didn't. So now that we have that vibrance slider pushed up, or I'm sorry, vibrance selected, it will have increased the vibrance. Now, I feel like it could go a little bit further, so maybe we'll do something like that. It just makes that green stand out a little bit more. Now, everything else in the color space, maybe I could work with this brick down here. So let's see if we can use a color range mask. Now, I'm going to hit add adjustment, not add exposure. Just going to go ahead and remove that exposure adjustment. And so I can see what's happening, I'm just going to pull down on the saturation pretty drastically, and then we'll kind of fade that back in. So to use the color range mask, what you're going to want to do is come up here to masking and then click on color range. And by default, it's going to give you like this little peach color. You can very easily just click on the color swatch here and you can kind of move this around and choose whatever range you want to work with. But what I really want to do here is just grab the picker tool, and I'm going to click on the red brick. And as soon as I do that, you can see what it does. It's grabbing that brick. But if I hit the letter O, I get an overlay, and it is grabbing way more than just a red brick. We can also see that in the result here. So what I'm going to do is hit the letter O again, come back up to masking, and then I'm just going to pull down on my color range until I start to see that red brick as the primary selection. You know that it's being the primary selection because it'll be mostly in white. Everything that's white, the adjustment will impact, and everything that's black, the adjustment will not. Anything that's gray, it'll partially impact that portion of the image. So as I pull this down, you can see now I'm selecting more so those bricks. I do have some specks up here, and I can clean that up with a brush or with another gradient tool. So not going to worry about that. I'll hit the letter O and take a look at what we got. Now, this is obviously way too stark of an adjustment. And the reason for that is I don't have any feather going on right now. So I'm going to come back up to masking, and I'm going to grab my feather tool, and I'm just going to pull up on this feather until that gets a little bit more blurry. All right. And what that's doing, if you're not familiar with what feather does inside of a mask, is it just kind of spreads that adjustment evenly across the image in a way that's a little bit more natural. So if I hit the letter O, you can see that looks a little bit more natural. If I pull it down, just so you can see, it's very stark. There's very harsh edges that are happening with that transition. And as I pull this up, you can see it almost does nothing because the feather is so high. So you definitely have to find a balance. Now, I just want to very gently modify this color. So what I'm going to do is bring back my saturation just a little bit and maybe pull down on the vibrance because I want to mute those reds, but I don't want to eliminate them. And saturation is such a very aggressive tool of removing color in an image that I like to use vibrance to kind of fine tune this. And there's so many ways that I could go about adjusting this particular aspect of the image, but I'm okay with what I have going on here. Now, the reason why I wanted to kind of minimize these reds down here is I want to make this image look a little bit more faded. And so I may end up coming back and adding in some colors, but I just wanted to get that started in the local adjustments. So now that I have that, let's go ahead and explore some of the options that are in effects. And the first effect that I'm going to apply right off the bat is a curves adjustment. And I really enjoy using the curves to kind of reduce the black point in the image. And since this is a JPEG, I have a really harsh black point just because that's how JPEGs build in the color profile in sRGB, which is what I shot this in. But what I'm going to do is go ahead and come to my bottom left point, and this represents the blacks. If I push it to the right, I'm just throwing more black into the image. And if I lift it up, I'm removing blacks from the image. And you can see how that's kind of fading the image because I'm introducing more white into the image. If you have questions about how the curves filter works, then check out the video in the description box below, or just leave a comment and I'll do my best to answer it in the comment section. But nonetheless, what I want to do here is just lift up on my blacks, introducing a little bit more white into the image to make it look a little faded. And then I'm going to bring my black point over. So essentially I'm reprogramming my black point. This is a very subtle adjustment, but for me, it is giving the aesthetic that I want in this particular image. Now, if I wanted to contrast this a little bit further, I can go ahead and grab a black point down here and just pull down on the curve. But that makes the image look extremely dark and very muddy because I'm introducing a lot of dark tones after I've already removed a lot of the darker tones by introducing white. That's probably way more information than necessary for this video, but what I really want to do is focus on something that's just a tad bit brighter. And what I haven't discussed is the histogram. So I have a lot of information right here. This is spiking. And what that's telling me is in my shadows area, which everything that's down here, this area up here, all of that is represented in this spike. So what I want to do is kind of tone that down just a bit. So I'm going to come right outside of that spike and I'm going to push this up in the shadow area. And now you can see I reprogrammed those shadow areas to have a little bit more life in them. And then what I can do is come down here and just grab a little bit of a black point to introduce more contrast. And if I turn this off and on, I think you'll be able to see the difference. And if it's not coming through on YouTube, I promise you, what it's doing is it's brightening the image. It's also giving it a little bit more of a matte look, which is stylistic. No one has to do that, but I do enjoy adding this in to my images. So from this point on, I think all I really need to do is figure out how I want to accentuate the main subject. And what I could do is just darken down the background. And I probably should have done that in local, but we're already here in effects. So I'm just going to go ahead and add in a tone enhancer. And what this is going to allow me to do is I'm just going to select the background, but I'm not going to select it the way that you probably think. Instead, I'm going to go ahead and hit the letter W, and I'm going to select the fire hydrant. So I want the whole fire hydrant selected because I don't want any of this adjustment that I'm about to apply to impact the fire hydrant. All right. So now that I have the fire hydrant selected, I'm going to hit erase and I'm going to remove the fire hydrant from the mask overall. So I'll hit the blue icon here and you'll see that I get a black mask around the fire hydrant. And if you remember from earlier, white actually impacts the image and black protects areas of the image. Or in other words, in other ways of saying it, white adds the filter to those areas. Black does not allow the filter to get added to those areas. So if I hit the letter O, I am going to grab, actually, let's go back to letter O, or not letter O, the overlay. I'm going to hit the letter M on my keyboard to get the masking bug, and I'm going to hit the plus icon. And I want you to watch what happens here. Notice I am no longer impacting the top part of the image. I'm only impacting the bottom. Now, I want the opposite of that. So what I'm going to do is grab this little circle and I am going to rotate it around until I'm only impacting the top part of the image because that's where that street is that I want to apply my tone adjustment to. Now, what this is really doing is it's keeping that AI mask, because I applied that first, keeping that on the image. And then when I hit the plus icon to add in a gradient mask, it is also intersecting or combining the two masks together, creating this opportunity for me to only impact the top part here and not the fire hydrant. I know that that's probably a little bit more complex and I may not have expressed that very well, but the result will be very easy to follow along with. So now that we're out of the overlay view, if I go ahead and pull down on my exposure, you'll notice that I'm only applying that to the background here. And if I pull down on my mask, I can bring this all the way down so it's the entire background, which I don't want. I want to kind of fade this in to about here. And then I'm going to make a very, very large feather with my mask here. Maybe do something like that. So I'll go ahead and pull up on this because it doesn't look very natural. And I think that that looks just about where I want it to be. So if I turn this off, turn it back on, you can see all I'm doing is creating a little bit of contrast from the background to the foreground. And I could do that again with the bottom portion here, but I don't need to do that with the bottom portion because I'll just go ahead and add another tone enhancer and I will hit the letter, or actually I already have my masking bug. So I'm just going to select the bottom portion, rotate it. I don't necessarily care if the bottom part gets darker than the top part because this is already in shadow and it's not really much detail or information worth sharing. So this is how I am creating a little bit of separation between the subject and the background. The other way that I can create a little bit of subject separation is by adding in an additional filter. This time I'm going to add in a lens blur filter, and it's going to make everything look blurry at the onset. But if I go ahead and click on the mask and then right click and select create depth mask, it's going to analyze the image and it's going to apply the effect again in the white areas. It's going to select the subject. I want the inverse of that, or the opposite of that. So I'm going to right click on the mask and then I'm going to click invert mask. That's going to give me the inverse, or the background selected versus the actual fire hydrant itself. Now, if you notice, I have some gray in this mask. I need to tailor that to make sure I'm not selecting the fire hydrant at all. So to do that, I'm just going to come over here to levels and I'm going to play around with them until I get what I need. So we'll leave that one there and let's pull down on the brightest areas. And I think that that's going to make it look just about right. So now I actually have a good selection. When it comes to depth mask modification, it does take a little bit of work and understanding. So I'm not going to go deep into that because this is just a quick edit and I'm also explaining some of my ideas here, but you can see what it's doing to the background, and I'll just crank up on the amount and you can see what it's doing there. It's just giving me a little bit more separation and depth of field, making this photo look just that much more interesting. Now, if I wanted to continue darkening that background, I could do so by using the brightness here, but I'm not going to worry about that. Instead, what I'm going to do is just push up on the optical quality, and I think that this will be a good look overall for this image. Let's just go ahead and pull this back. So now the last thing that I want to do is, I feel like too many images are just perfectly sharp. Every image can't be perfectly sharp or shouldn't be perfectly sharp, at least if you're going for a certain aesthetic. Personal opinion, you leave your comment about that down in the comment section below. I'd love to hear it. So the way that I have recently been working on reducing sharpness is I've been adding in a glow. Now, glows are phenomenal for just breaking up some of that monotony. All right. Now, the way that I do it is I crank up the amount just a little bit so I can start to see the effect. And then I grab the halo and I just kind of pull up on the halo. And then I play around based off of the image itself. I play around with the blend mode. All right. So right now, lighten looks a little too hazy for my taste. Darken doesn't look bad, but not quite what I want. And screen usually is the one that works well. Overlay and soft light, those are going to build contrast, but it looks like soft light strong is working the best for this image. Now that is way too strong of a look for me. So what I'm going to do is go ahead and tailor this down. So the first thing, I just pull back on the amount because I don't need it to be completely blurred. I just want it to be a little blurred. All right. And then I'll pull back on the haloing as well. And I think that that looks about appropriate. So if I turn it off and turn it back on, you can see things just get a little bit softer overall. It's not taking away sharpness. I could use a blur tool, but I prefer to use the glow to kind of take away that edge sharpness. Now, the last thing that I'm going to do to this image before I go ahead and slap my seal of approval on it is I'm going to add in another tone enhancer. And this one is going to focus on boosting up or bringing back some of those lost highlights and brightness. So I'm just going to go ahead and push the exposure just a little bit, and you'll see that it brings back just a touch of that brightness that I've been losing in the overall image. Don't need a whole lot, just needs a little bit. So here's the before. and here is the after image. Now I can continue working on this image, but I try not to overdo my edits. I want them to be subtle, but something that's enjoyable to look at. Let me know what your thoughts are in the comment section below. And if you want to learn more about ON1 Photo RAW, consider signing up for a training call with me. The link for that is in the description box below. If you want to save some money when you shop over at the ON1 website, consider using my coupon code FreeWillPhotos20. It'll save you some money when you check out. I do make a small commission, but that's at no extra charge to you, and I'm greatly appreciative to everyone who uses that coupon code. If you got questions, leave them in the comment section, and until the next time, I want you to stay inspired and keep creating. Peace.